Hi, hello, vanakkam, and welcome to yet another episode on Little's Law YouTube channel. After a long time, we are coming for the NeoLoad tutorials. So today, we are going to see about the various variables. We'll see what are the variables we have, and today we are going to see about each and every variable one by one in a separate video with a detailed example and explanation. So before we use any counter or before we use any variables, we need a request. So let's see how to add a request and how to use variables in various different methods. So before we move on to the video, this is me, your Vasanth Shanmugam. I welcome you all to Little Slaw YouTube channel. Please do subscribe to our channel if you have not subscribed yet. Like, share, and comment your feedback. So now we have a transaction folder. We will name it as 01 underscore transaction 1. And now let's add a request as a child. So let's select insert as child and we'll select the HTTP request. So now we have a HTTP request window and let's create the request. So the request is get and find the products in here. So we have get and the URL here. Let's click create. So we have created a API HTTP request. So let's validate or to add the counter. Let's validate this URL and make sure that this particular URL works fine, because if after making all the change it's waste of time. So it is always better to validate the URL before we do all the changes. Start checking it. The testing has started, the checking has started, and let's see. So this is the request that we have sent. So it's a get request. And let's see the response. So here we can see the response that the first name is Cerulean and the year is 2000. So now the request is valid. So now let's use our counter or whatever variable we are planned for this session or this video. So let's now go to the variable, and here we have different variables, and for this particular demo we are selecting the counter variable. So we have the counter variable here and we have various parameters which we can set for the counter variable. So initially the counter variable name, and any time when you use a variable we have to name it related to the script what we are doing. So we have to rename if we really want to change it and if that is suitable for the script. So for now let's change the counter variable to product number, and we'll set the starting value to 1, and we'll have the maximum value to 100, and we'll have the increment value to 1. And then the value change policy. So we have 5 different value change policies. We will see them one by one. So for now we have set these basic setup, which is the starting value as 1, the maximum value as 100, the increment value as 1, and then in the value change policy we are changing it to each use. So let us click OK and click apply. Let's click OK and close this edit variable section. And now in the place where we want to update the value, we'll need to change it here. So this is where we have to change. So let me remove this, and you all know how to replace the variable, which is a dollar symbol and open bracket, which will take us to product number. So by changing this name for the variable, it is easy for us to identify what variable we are going to change. So let me replace it and make sure that it is closed. So now we have replaced the variable, and let's now go to the user path section, and here under the advanced we will do at least 3 iterations, and let's click OK, and we will start checking it, and let's see what happens. So the checking has started and all the 3 iterations are executed, and here we can see the user test path is valid, and here we have given 1 as the product number, but now we have replaced it to 3 counters, and here we could see all the 3 variables, which is 1, 2 and 3, and here we can see the response. So the first name, as we mentioned, the ID is 1 and the name and the year. And let's go to the next iteration. So by using this symbol, we can go to the next iteration in the loop. So I'm clicking on this symbol. This will take us to the next iteration in the loop, and here we can see the ID number is 2 and the name is different and the year has changed. Let's now go to the third iteration, and here we can see the ID is 3, the name is true red, and the year is 2002. So with this we have found out that the variable has changed, or has got incremented for each of its iteration. So let's make a small change now in the variable. So we'll go to the variable. For the first time we will create, but after that it is just editing these values. So let's now do a small change, which is on each request. So let's change this to on each request, and we'll click apply, and let's see what happens. But before that we will create one more transaction. So let me duplicate this transaction, and now we have transaction 2, and we have the same variable in here. Let's save this and we'll execute it, and let's see how does it work. So now we have 3 iterations, and let's see how does it work. And now we have 2 transactions with 2 requests, and let's see what is the counter values. So the test has completed, and we can see that the value has incremented for each request, and that's the reason we can see here that 2 transactions has got incremented each times. So which is 3 into 2, which is 6 iterations. So we have got 6 different requests, and let's make a small change and let's see how does it work. So let's change this to each page, and let's see how does this work. Let's click OK, and now let's run the same request. So initially we started with each use and then on each request, and now it's on each page, and let's see what is the difference between these 3 change policy. So here we can see that the values have not got incremented, and that is because we have chosen on each page. Even though we have 2 transactions, but when we choose it as each page, the transactions have not incremented and the number have not got incremented, and that's the reason, or that's how this value change policy. So let's now go for the fourth operation, which is the fourth value change policy, which is on each iteration. And let's now move to the on each iteration. And so far we have executed on each use, on each request, and on each page. We found out that when we make this change, the counter has not got incremented. And let's now move to the on each iteration and let's see how does it work. So now we have got 3 iterations with 2 transactions, and let's start checking. So here we can see that for each iteration, the value has got incremented. So we have got 3 iterations. So no matter how many transactions we have, since we have changed the value change policy to each iteration, and this will be the result, that is the value will get incremented on each iteration. And then finally we have the for each virtual user instance. So let's check that now. So I'm selecting on each virtual user iteration. So before that we saw on each use, on each request, on each page, on each iteration, and finally we are in for each virtual user instance. Let me run this. So we have got one user with 2 transactions with 3 iterations. And let's run the script and see what is the counter variable, or how does it get increased or incremented in each of its iteration. So every value is the same since we have got only one user who is doing the test. So this change that we have got here for each virtual user instance will reflect only when you run a multiple user load test. So only at those scenarios this will get update, since we use multiple virtual users. So let's now make a small change, that is incrementing the value to 3. So now we have the starting value as 1 and the increment value as 3. And let's change it to each use and let's see how does it work. And the maximum value is going to be 100. And let's start the test again. So we have got 2 requests with 3 iterations. And let's start the checking. So let's recap once. So we have got the value to be incremented to 3 on each use and 2 iterations with 3 transactions. So now here we have got the values incremented from 1 to 4 to 7 and then 10, 13 and 16. But since there are no values more than 10, so we have got this errors, so that we can avoid for now, because the purpose of this video is to see about the counters. So we'll validate the values till 10. So we can understand here. So the counter works this way. So here, since for each request or for each use, the number has got incremented. So let's now see one more change in the value. So let's now keep the maximum value to 10 and we'll increment the value to 5. So here we have 2 options. One is the scope and one is the when out of value. So here let me have as cycle values and let's see what happens here once we run the test. So here we have the starting value as 1 and the maximum value as 10. So let's, for now we'll have it as 4 for a change for 4, and then we will run the test and let's see what happens and how does the values has got incremented. So here we can see we have incremented the value 4 each time. So from 1 it is 5, and after that it is 4, and then again it starts from 1, and then it started to 5 and then to 9. So once it reaches the maximum value, which is the 10, it starts to cycle the values, and that's the reason we are again starting back from 1 and then 5 and 9. So this is the reason we have this cycle value. So in case if you want, or if you can reuse the value, so we can use this recycling of values. So let's now see the next example, which is the stop the test, and let's see what happens when we do, or when we run the test with stop the test as the cycle values or the out of values option. So here we can see the first transaction has started with 1, and the second has started with 5, the third has started with 9, and the last has got stopped since the maximum value we have is 10, and that's the reason the test has stopped after the maximum value based on the stop the test. So in case if you run a test where you cannot reuse the value, we can use this so that the test will stop once the maximum value has reached. And then let's use the last option, which is the return the value no value. So now we are trying the third option, and let's run the test again and see what does this return the no value does. So here when we give, or when we choose this option, it will not stop the test, but instead it will return the value as no value. But most of the cases we normally don't use this, but in case if you really want to understand why does it fail or what is the reason, we can actually use this option. But this is rarely, or just 1 or 2%, less than 1% we normally use this. So most of the times we use cycle values or stop the test. So far we have seen about how to use the counter variable. So let's do a quick recap. So we have tried the on each use, and then on each request, and then on each page, and then on each iteration, and then finally for each virtual user instance. And also we have incremented the value in various different options of 1, 2, 3, and now 4. And then we have got 2 options under variable value distribution policy, which is cycling the values and stopping the test, and then return the value to no value. And there is one more thing. So while incrementing the value, we don't have option to just give any symbols like star or heart symbol, but we can try the minus symbol, where we can start the value from 10 and move it to number 1. So this decrementing the value also works when we use with the proper symbol. So let's try that. So we'll go to the cycle values and let's do that as well. So this is again an option we have, which we can try in case if we have a requirement where we want to decrement the value, and that too works with the counter. Sorry, let's change it to each use and let's run it again. So here we can see it started with the maximum value of 10, and then it went to 7, 4, 1, and then again it started with the maximum value, which is at the starting value as 10, and then it went back to 7. So not only the plus symbol or the addition works, even the subtraction works, and they are the only two options. So you cannot try with multiplication, or you cannot try with division, and again this value has to be an integer. You cannot try with 0.5 or 0.1 or 10.0 or 10.5. So it has to be an integer, but there are only two things, which is addition or subtraction, or addition, the increment value in a particular series, or decrement value in a particular series. We can either use 4 or you can either use -4. So these are the two options which you can try based on your business requirement. So with that, we come to an end, and so far we have seen about how to add a counter, how to replace it in the required area, and then we saw how to use that with various different value change policies, and we have saw about how to use them in when we are out of values, and then we saw about how to increment with both positive and with negative values. So I believe this video would have been very useful to you. Until we meet you in our next session, it's bye bye from Vasanth and Little's Law.